So we're going to have a little look at using questions to check understanding when we're teaching, coaching and instructing. Before we even begin, we need to remember that people who take lessons and courses with us want to learn and improve. Giving our students time to consider what their actions are going to be or what they have been allows improved self-development skills. In order to achieve this, our students must feel comfortable and secure. An element of friendship must develop between us and our students. Our students need to understand the reason for doing a task, and people will definitely learn best when they're having fun. So why do we ask questions or use questions? We use them as a way to gather information. However, like everything in our job, there is definitely a skill to it. Questions also give us the opportunity to engage our students and connect with them. It also encourages them to talk and communicate. However, none of this works unless we stop and listen. Any question we ask is pointless unless you're engaged in active listening, i.e., you listen to the response, allow your student to finish what they're saying, and we don't interrupt. But how do we ask the right question? So firstly, think of the answer you're hoping for before considering the question to ask. Then ponder the type of question you ask to get the response you're looking for. Pose the question to your students. Pause to allow your students to consider how to answer, and then listen attentively to their answer and allow them time to finish. Two types of questions, open and closed questions. Closed questions is when we're looking for short, specific and focused answers, whereas open questions is when we're looking for our student to give us a longer answer or a better explanation of whatever the subject matter is. As an instructor, using open questions requires more thought than closed questions. If they are worded poorly, you can end up in hugely lengthy conversations that don't achieve the goal you are seeking. However, done right, they can be one of the most productive and effective ways to check understanding and for your students to learn. Closed questions usually start with words like can, would, which, could, did, do, does, are, or is, many of which can simply be responded with a yes or no. So we're going to use them when we just want a quick answer, or we want to give our student an easy answer that they will feel a success from because they've managed to respond. We can also use them to keep control of the conversation length, or if we're trying to wrap up a conversation and move on, and it has the potential to end a conversation too. Whereas open questions, you might have seen this picture before. It's called bums on a rugby post. So the rugby post is for H for how, and then the bottoms are what, where, why, when, and who. If we use any of these words to start a question, we generally get a fairly open response. So when we use open questions, we're looking to get a more in-depth or lengthy response, or we want to allow our students more control over the conversation because this will then build their confidence. We also can ensure that it goes through the pause, ponder, reflect process as our student goes through that process. When we're probing for clarity and completeness, and when we want to start a group discussion, this is also a useful way of doing it. So here's some examples of some open versus closed questions. So for example, if you use a closed question such as, is the crotch strap useful on a life jacket? You're going to get an answer that's something like yes. However, if we use a question like, what benefits does a crotch strap have? Then we're going to get a more thorough answer that tells us that our student actually understands why they need a crotch strap on their life jacket or what the benefits of it are. Another example would be, would you wear a life jacket afloat? Bearing in mind the courses that most of these people are on, you'd hope that they'd say yes. But the question is, do they know why? Why it's so important that in pretty much all conditions that they should probably wear a life jacket. I'd quite want them to respond and tell me what the reasons are, rather than just nodding their head because I'm the instructor and I'm sat in front of them and that's the right thing for them to say at the time. The decision on the type of question, whether it's open or closed, is up to you, but it really is depending on the type of answer you're looking for. So if you want something that fulfills, for example, and understands in the RWA core syllabus, then you'll want to use an open question to get that type of response. Whereas if it's a knowledge of in the RWA syllabuses, then perhaps a closed question is more appropriate. So the end goal of all of this stuff is to try and create a question funnel. A question funnel combines the use of open and closed questions. For example, you start with 1 or 2 closed questions to ensure success and enable your students to feel confident. We can then follow up with open, probing questions to get the depth we're seeking, and then end with a specific closed question to wrap up the conversation. But how do we use it? So number 1, stop, pick out 3 to 5 key teaching points of the session or lesson you're delivering. It doesn't matter what it is, as in what the lesson is. It works for all of them. And then number 2, think of the answers you're wanting your students to give. At that point, you can come up with some questions. So here's an example. Some key teaching points of a Man Overboard session. These certainly aren't all of them, but as an example, the direction and speed of approach to the Man Overboard, the crew jobs or briefing that the helm's going to give, safety elements, or the most important safety elements, and then how the Man Overboard is going to be picked up. So now we've got those key teaching points, we need to think of questions so that we can get the answers out of our students without telling them. So some example questions based on what the key teaching points are. Are we going to use a drive on or drift on method? This is definitely a closed question, which will just be responded with, for example, a drive on method. Do we need to make a mayday call? Hopefully the answer will be yes, because we've given that in our briefing and our demonstration. What is the direction and speed of approach? Again, a fairly closed question. They should hopefully say if it's a drive-on method, into the wind and slow. We can then ask a more open question, like what considerations need to be made? One would hope they'd start thinking about prepping the boat, giving a crew briefing, where they're going to pick the Man Overboard up from, whether there's any kit to prepare, like first aid kits, recovery methods, etc. And then there's a few other questions, examples below that. So, if it sounds stressful, my response to you would be try it. You will like it. Your students will like it. And the success rate behind this and our students' interactivity with us and their learning will improve massively. So give it a go. Don't be stressed on the first few attempts. It might not go to plan, but the more you practice, the better you'll get and the more success you'll have out of this. If you found any benefit from this little tutorial video, then stay connected with us through Facebook or Instagram, YouTube. There's lots of information on our website and particularly lots of free tutorials. Or obviously you're very welcome to come and join us for an RWA course. Thanks for listening.